It's nice to have your book come out at the right time.
Thanks.
There's a new bout of activism. What is different with a Carl Icahn-like activism now versus the history of it, the sprawl of it that's in Dear Chairman?
Well, I think the main thing that has been happening now is you have this bloom of hedge fund activism. And a lot of that has been driven by the complicit passive investors behind the scenes, the big institutions. And just in the past few months, the big institutions have begun to kind of pull back from that some.
I would have called your book Once It Was Quite Francine. This is absolutely fabulous, page 208. Dear fellow shareholder, put us to work to make your stock more valuable. We have bought stock with a present market value of $25 million in the faith that we can. Yours truly, Robert Young. What a time from the New York Central Railroad to the slug 'em out battles in media. Now, where did the meanness come in?
The meanness?
The meanness come in. The hit or miss, you, this, we got to get on with Francine Lacroix, ... When did that come in?
Well, in the 50s, it was a very different game. It was a PR game. The shareholder bases of these public companies were, individual investors, Aunt Janes, as Mr. Young called them. The meanness came in more in the 80s and the 90s with the corporate raiders, but especially the hedge fund activists of the 90s.
So you keep circling back to the hedge funds.
I'm circling back twice. Yes.
Francine, it's those evil hedge fund people causing us activism angst.
Yeah, but actually, Jeff, it goes to the point. So, Larry Fink of BlackRock also came out earlier this week with an open letter saying we need to focus and support activists that are longer term. He's almost fed up with these guys that just want higher dividends and bigger share buybacks. Is that right? Is that the way where we should go? And should regulators actually crack down on the other shareholder activists?
No, I mean, I don't think they should crack down, but it's a very interesting dynamic. I think in the past 5 years, these big institutions like Mr. Fink have been behind the scenes supporting a lot of these activist campaigns. And recently, they've said, well, we're not comfortable with just being the arbiters of these hedge fund activists. And so now they're trying to figure out, how can we drive governance to be better? And, Mr. Diamond and Mr. Buffett have convened to kind of put together a best practices list. And so it seems like it could be a turning point in corporate governance, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
So, Jeff, in your mind, do you have a list of shareholder activists, the ones that actually do more damage to a company or do, more long-term damage to governance, and the ones that actually want the benefit? It's very sometimes, in certain cases, unclear who's right and wrong.
Yeah. No, and, that's the point of my book, right? It's, I'm not, trying to call some people good activists or bad activists, but I'm trying, to help people understand where this came from, and how to judge each activist campaign, and how to judge the incentives involved.
And part of this, in this incentives involved, is the idea of the sprawl of it and all the wonderful letters that you've got in Dear Chairman. One of the constancies here is a guy like Carl Icahn, who we know today with Apple Computer, and I guess he just jettisoned those shares. What's different between the Carl Icahn of 30 years ago in activism and the Carl Icahn of today?
I mean, he's the same, right? He's an economic actor out to make a buck. The difference is the nature of the shareholder base. The difference is
in supporting Carl Icahn, where years ago it was like, oh, please.
Well, I would say in the 80s, especially in the early 80s, that the big passive shareholders were very checked out, and they could be exploited by the corporate raiders. And now, they're involved and engaged, and they're more sophisticated. And so if you're Carl Icahn, then you have to appeal to those big shareholders.
I have to ask you this with the heritage of your family and the work that your father did. He had a quote once with Alan Greenspan that escapes me right now that was just brilliant. But it's about Washington in this political time. What can Washington do about activism? What is the Jeff Gramm proactive approach for Washington to get their handles on this?
I have no recommendations.
Would you like to announce that you're running for president today? A lot of the Republican Party would probably like you to run for president with the mess they're in right now.
I think as the child of a political family, I'm pretty apolitical. But I think that ultimately,
Did he just say that? I can't believe you're apolitical. Okay, go.
But this is a situation where, in an ideal world, you want the market forces to reward the well-governed companies.
Right.
And that is what Jamie Dimon and Lawrence Fink have realized, and they're trying to influence that process. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they do that.
Well, in this time of financial engineering, Dear Chairman, is an interesting book and a beautiful historical walkthrough about how the industry moved from grace and charm to the battle today. The book is Dear Chairman, Jeff Gramm. Thank you so much.